Did you watch Shadow and Bone on Netflix and realize there's 7 books, I need to read them? Do you have a loved one that really wants you to watch the show but won't let you until you read the books? Do you just subscribe to Katie Can't Read and you're not interested at all? Well, if you're any of those things, this video is for you. Hi, welcome back to Katie Can't Read. I'm Katie, I can read. I have my Jenya David earrings and my Six of Crows No Mourners No Funeral socks on today because I am going to give you my guide to the Grishaverse. I'm a self-proclaimed Grishaverse aficionado, and I am a keeper of the gate of this Netflix show. I will be keeping that gate. I will be gatekeeping. So if you don't click off because of that, this is to help you avoid the tolls at the gate. So if you really want to watch this series, but you don't know where to start, you just found out they're based on books and you would love to get into them, I'm here to help you. I want to help you, and this is a very good time. So essentially, the Grishaverse is a 7-book series that takes place in this industrial fantasy universe that's loosely based on like an 1800s Russia. Ravka's the name of the country, Katie. You are so deep. Anyway, it's a world created by Leigh Bardugo. There are 7 books, 3 series within those 7 books, and there are 2 companion standalone short story collections, I guess. And I'm going to tell you all of them. I'm going to tell you what they're about. I'm going to tell you why you should read them, why you shouldn't read them, why you need to read them in the order that I recommend, and why you can break the order and which one you can't break the order for. I got you. I got you, baby boo. I'm here for you. I'm here for you. So without further ado, let's jump into it and talk about the Shadow and Bone trilogy. The first series in the Grishaverse by publication date is, of course, the Shadow and Bone trilogy. Disclaimer, I don't have all 3 books with me right now, but I'll put them on the little screen here. So the Shadow and Bone trilogy is a 3-book series that consists of Shadow and Bone, Siege and Storm, and Ruin and Rising in that order. Shadow and Bone follows Alina Starkov and her discovery of realizing she has cosmic powers and how she gets whisked away to learn about them, and then goes through a whole lot in 3 books. This is a really exciting YA fantasy, and it's really easy to read. I feel like out of all of these books, these are the easiest to read. They are very lighthearted, quick reads, fast-paced, and they're just fun. I will put out this warning though that they are not high literature. They're not like art. I feel like what's so good about the Grishaverse is they grow up with you. So if you read this when it first came out, the books get darker and more complicated, and the writing gets stronger as you grow with them. So keep that in mind. This is a very fun trilogy, in my opinion. I really like them. A lot of people feel about them, but I love them. I think they're a good time. I think the characters are fantastic, and I think the overall plot is just really, really fun. And some of the plot twists that happen throughout still get me. They're still exciting to me. Yeah. I recommend this series a lot. I know when a lot of people do these lists, they say you can leave them out. I actually think you should never leave these out. I think they are very important, but we will get to that when I talk about order. The second series, based on publication date, is the Six of Crows duology. So Six of Crows is 2 books. It's Six of Crows first and Crooked Kingdom second. It is, look at all those tabs. It is about Kaz Brecker and his team as they get offered a huge sum of money to commit a big crime, and it is Be Gay Do Crime, the book. This is kind of like the universal, everyone really enjoy, well, not everyone, I know people who don't like these, but I feel like in general, people who are Grishaverse fans, this is the book that they latch onto. This is the book everyone loves. I see this in people's top 10 favorite books of all the time. These are pretty much masterpieces, in my opinion. They have dark moments, character development, humor, heart, love, some killer romance, 3 iconic ships, like iconic ships. And of course, a found family aspect that is considered one of the greatest found families of all time by a lot of people. Not me though. I have a video about that. Anyway, this series is a really good time. It's very, very, very character driven though. I always feel like Shadow and Bone is a plot driven series. So if you really like plot, you will love Shadow and Bone. But if you really love character, you will love Six of Crows. I love these characters and I love this story. So I highly recommend Six of Crows. It's a 5-star duology to me. I love it. The final series in this universe is the one that was just most recently wrapped up, and that is the King of Scars duology, which is King of Scars first and Rule of Wolves second. To me, this is a 4-star series because I felt like King of Scars drags, but I loved Rule of Wolves. I thought Rule of Wolves was epic and it caused me a lot of pain, and it still causes me pain, but I did really enjoy it. However, this one is... Anyway, so this is I almost consider these new adult books just because of how politically driven it all is, and the characters are now old. So these follow characters we already know and love that we have met in both the Shadow and Bone trilogy and the Six of Crows duology. Specifically, it follows Nikolai, who I'm sure everyone's heard about even if you don't know this series. Nikolai is a main character in the latter half of the Shadow and Bone trilogy, and then he gets his own world, his own little story to figure out the fallout of the end of Ruin and Rising. He's left with a lot to unpack and a lot to deal with, and that's what these are about. These books they're very, very fun. They're really complicated, and they sort of break the world in a way that you don't anticipate, and it's kind of really fun to see how she built this world that had really rigid rules essentially for 5 books, and then she broke them and changed them, and now the world is different, and it's in a good way. I don't mean that in a way that doesn't make sense. It all makes sense, and it's very, very, very fun. I actually love the found family in this more than I love the found family in Six of Crows, but you know what? You guys can just attack me. It's fine. I accept it. Yeah, but we'll talk about why you need to read these later. If you like world building and you like the characters that you've already been established. I don't recommend this if you don't like the characters that have already been given to you. If you don't like any of them, you won't like these. But I think that if you already like the characters that you've been given in the last 5 books, you will love these. And finally, there are 2 standalone independent short story collections. The first one, based on publication date, being The Language of Thorns. So The Language of Thorns actually does not tie into much at all. This is a series of fairy tales and folklore that would be told in the countries. So these are the stories that Mal and Alina and Kaz and all these characters grew up hearing. Well, probably not Kaz, but these characters grew up with these fairy tales, and some of them get referenced. Not referenced enough that you're lost. You know what they're talking about when they say the story of the 2 clever fox. You're like, oh, okay, that's essentially an Aesop's fable in our world. That's kind of what this is. These are the Aesop's fables of the Grishaverse. It's not required reading at all, in my opinion. I actually still have not read it yet. I just own it, and we're gonna do something fun with it in a few weeks. But it is a fun collection of short stories with beautiful, beautiful art in them. And they have at least 1 story for each of the major countries that we visit in the Grishaverse. So there's a Zemini one, there are 3 Ravkan ones, there's a Kerch one, and a Fjerdan one. And it is just, it's a good time if you want more. If you just want to know things that are important, you don't need to read this at all. And then the last one I don't have with me, but I have it at home, is The Lives of Saints. This one came out 3 months ago, maybe? The Lives of Saints is a collection of stories of the saints that are mentioned in the series. I don't recommend reading this as groundwork, though. There but but it essentially takes you through the major saints of Ravka. It's essentially Ravka's like Bible. You know, she essentially published Ravka's Bible. This one is also, I know, a replica of a prop that will be used in the show, so it's a little bit more of a collector's item than it is a reading material. But it has beautiful, stunning art that I wish I could show you, but it's far away. It has beautiful, stunning art for each of the saints, and if you do like the idea of all of the saints and where they came from, how they got their sainthood, then I recommend this. But if it's not something that you're like, I need to know this, it's not necessary. But it is very pretty and it's very fun and it's good to have on your little shelf. Before we get into order, I would just like to say that the two standalones, Language of Thorns and Lives of Saints, do not fit into the order at all. You can read them at any point. I don't recommend reading them first because that's insane. But I do think you can read them in between any series. You can split up Six of Crows and read them in between. Like, you can do whatever you want with them. They are definitely just independent collections of stories. So don't stress out about like reading order with those two if you've never done this before. So essentially there are two paths you can take in the Grishaverse. I'm going to tell you which one I think is better, but there are two paths you can choose. The first path, of course, being starting with Shadow and Bone, Siege and Storm, Ruin and Rising, Six of Crows, Crooked Kingdom, King of Scars, and finally Rule of Wolves, which is the epic finale of all of it. However, if you're me, I actually started with Six of Crows. I don't recommend this order. You can do it. You can do it, but I don't recommend it, and I'll tell you why after I tell you what the order is. The second order that you can follow is Six of Crows, Crooked Kingdom, Shadow and Bone, Siege and Storm, Ruin and Rising, King of Scars, and Rule of Wolves. So what order do I personally prefer? I prefer going Shadow and Bone trilogy first, Six of Crows duology second, and King of Scars last. You absolutely can start with Six of Crows if you think you'll like it better, but so much world building is set up in Shadow and Bone that I think it is essential that you get that world building before you dive in, especially if you're not a seasoned fantasy reader. I feel like for people who are very into fantasy, Six of Crows is not that hard to understand, but if you are not a seasoned fantasy reader, it is not a good starting place. Shadow and Bone is very straightforward. It is told in a first-person perspective, so things are much easier to understand, and it's the first introduction to the world we ever get as readers. So it's all the building blocks. Six of Crows, however, assumes that a fair amount of people that are reading it already know the world. So you're essentially dropped in and expected to run with it. And like, that is very fun, but it's, you know, the other thing that you need to note too is all three of these series do stand alone. You don't need to, like, if you really like the Six of Crows duology, you don't have to read Shadow and Bone, and you don't have to read King of Scars. They're all just continuations of a greater story. There is it's not an overarching plot at all. There are three distinct plots that are connected because the characters come back. That's really the reason it's connected. The other reason I think you should read Shadow and Bone first is in Six of Crows, there are cameos that we get. There are cameos, there are callbacks, and there are so many things, especially because Nina herself is a Grisha. And so after you get attached to all of the Grisha that live at the Little Palace in the Shadow and Bone trilogy, Nina does reference them, and she references her past. And so that makes it all just a little bit richer. And it also, as you know the world building and you have spent so much time in Ravka in Shadow and Bone specifically, then you get to see another country and how they view Ravka and all these things. So if you already have that connection with Ravka, then it all makes the political aspects so much more interesting. And I feel like Shadow and Bone as a trilogy lays so much groundwork that is essential to the later two series that you have to have. I also need to say this now, King of Scars is not your first Grishaverse book. It should not be. There are huge spoilers for the rest of the series, and it's not a good place to start. It's a very, very fun series, but it is built upon the fallout of the last two series. Everything that happens in King of Scars happens because of the end of Ruin and Rising and the end of Crooked Kingdom. There are so many things that are introduced in those 2 books that are explored then. So you can, like, they stand alone, but so much of it is built into the last 5 books that you shouldn't. Especially because the characters are all characters we've already met. There are very few new main characters. So I am very much team Shadow and Bone, Six of Crows, King of Scars, but you can read them in any order, arguably. But I think for the greatest reading experience, you should go Shadow and Bone trilogy, Six of Crows duology, King of Scars duology, and then put those short story collections wherever you want. If by the end you're like, oh, I need more Grishaverse, then you can read them. If you just want more groundwork, then yeah, but I don't think you need it. I've read all of it, and I don't think you need Lives of Saints or Language of Thorns to understand anything. Thank you so much for watching. I'm sorry if you're like a big reader that follows my channel and you're just like, I can't believe Kate just made a video that I already knew everything in. This is not for you. This is for me. I hope Shadow and Bone goes well for all of us. As I've said a few times, this is before this show has even debuted, and I'm a little nervous. I'm a little nervous. As you can tell, I am very attached to these books. I own all of the collector's editions. I love this series, I love this universe, and I'm very excited to see it come to life. If you've watched the show, by the time this goes up, I will have watched most, if not all, of the episodes. So let's talk about it in the comments. Let's talk about it. Keep it spoiler free though, like let's keep everything spoiler free down below. But by the time this goes up, I will have watched all of the episodes. So I am a safe person to talk to or rant to if it goes horribly. We don't know. I love the Grishaverse. I hope this helps you, and I will see you in the next chapter. Bye.